There are many new developments in the Avdiivka region, which is the area of the most intense fighting. The Avdiivka region is a region where intense clashes have been going on for a very long time and Russia has suffered huge losses. The Ukrainian army managed to defend Avdiivka with the strategies it created. Although the intensive offensives of the Russian army continue, the Ukrainian army continues to defend the region. With the deterioration of weather conditions, reconnaissance operations became difficult. This situation is unfavorable for both Ukraine and Russia. The accuracy of Russian airstrikes has decreased. The Ukrainian army, on the other hand, has difficulty in following Russia's movements on the front line. The Ukrainian army is trying to expand the front line by expanding the area of movement on the defense line. In this way, it has a chance to be more effective against Russian attacks. The expansion of the defense blocks on the front line is an important advantage to weaken the power of Russian attacks. Fighting continues on the northern and southern flanks of Avdiivka. After the Ukrainian army finally pushed the Russians back to the railways, the Russians retreated and started to prepare a new attack. Ukrainian forces reported that the Russians applied a different tactic and strategy, sent a large number of tanks and armored vehicles to the region, and advanced with these assault units. However, the Russian army could no longer use heavy equipment here due to the restriction of the movement area in the northern region and the mines in the region. The superiority of the Ukrainian forces on the roads and the fire on the Russian armored vehicles prevented the Russians from using heavy equipment in the region. However, the Russian army continued to fail in the region, trying to advance without armored equipment. The Russian army tried to advance towards the Ukrainian defense blocks with Russian infantry. However, when this attack attempt failed, the Russian commanders realized that such attacks would fail and decided to support the infantry with armored vehicles. The Russian forces carried out a belief operation in the area. They tried to detect the movements and positions of the Ukrainian defense blocks. The Russian aim was to reach the Stepova area. However, reconnaissance teams of the Ukrainian army, which were waiting for the counter-offensive operation, also monitored Russian movements in the area. The Ukrainian army detected a Russian tank moving to the area. The Ukrainian army, which waited to destroy the Russian tank, deployed a tank at a strategic point. The Ukrainian army met the Russian tank and assault troops and opened fire on them. The Russian tank was badly damaged and the Russian troops had to retreat under heavy fire from the Ukrainian army. What kind of strategy do you think the Russian army will apply after the failed attacks? As the Russian attacks continue to fail with December, the Ukrainian army is forcing the Russians to retreat by strengthening the defense blocks. After the failed attack the previous day, Russian forces planned a new offensive operation. This attack was much more crowded and organized. The Russians retreated behind the railway line and gathered here. The Russians used 10 tanks, armored combat vehicles and about 100 soldiers in the offensive operation. Instead of pulling back the defense blocks and waiting for the Russians, the Ukrainian army decided to meet the Russians right in front of the railway line and advanced. The Ukrainian army detected the movement positions of the Russians and directed kamikaze drones to the area. Kamikaze drones managed to destroy 4 vehicles in front of the attack line. Desperate in the face of Ukraine's active defense strategy, the Russian armor decided to flee. Following the armored vehicles, Russian infantry also retreated backwards. However, the Russians, who failed to retreat with the effect of the attack, were neutralized in the region. Ukrainians said that more than 40 Russian soldiers were killed in front of the attack line. The Russian infantry, which organized offensive operations at different times after the failed attacks, also failed. What do you think about the pressure exerted by the Ukrainian army on the defensive line and its success? The Russian army is losing troops not only in Avdiivka, but also in other areas. The Ukrainian armed forces previously stated that in November 2023, Russian troops lost almost 11,000 personnel in the Kupiansk, Liman and Bakhmut regions. At the same time, the pace of hostilities in these areas is currently lower than in the Avdiivka area. These casualty reports suggest that Russian losses in the Avdiivka area could be even higher, given the higher intensity of fighting there. Russian troops are currently conducting massive infantry assaults to capture Avdiivka, apparently in an effort to preserve armored vehicles despite the risk of even greater casualties. However, the Russian army has not succeeded in protecting its armored vehicles. And at the same time, Russian forces try to maintain control of positions located on the north of the chemical plant. According to the head of the Ukrainian Avdiivka military and geolocated images from the Ukrainian Special Forces, the area had been cleared. Ukrainian military explained that the occupiers would not be able to capture Avdiivka unless they took control of the territory of the Avdiivka coke plant. Currently, fierce battles continue along the entire front line in the Avdiivka area, particularly in Stepove, northeast of the city. Invaders aim to seize it to disrupt the logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces. In recent days, the Russians have carried out offensive operations in the northern region, and these attacks have failed, but the most important point of the Avdiivka area is actually the southern region. The Ukrainian army successfully stopped the Russian offensive in the northern region and continued to strengthen its defense positions in the southern region. The Russian operations in the chemical plant area are quite insufficient to maintain control in the region. Russian commanders are also aware of this situation. The Ukrainian army is successfully defending the Russian attacks in the region and inflicting losses on the Russians. Ukrainian forces are not only waiting in defense position, they are organizing offensive operations against critical Russian targets. The Ukrainian army recently launched a powerful missile attack on the main Russian logistics center. After the Ukrainians blew up a bridge in the region and completely severed the connection with Avdiivka, the Donetsk region became the main supply point for both wings. The Ukrainian army, together with reconnaissance operations, detected the Russian ammunition depot near the city and destroyed it. The Ukrainian army has been using this tactic for a long time. It aims to slow down the attacks of the Russians by attacking the supply routes and ammunition depots in the region. Russian occupiers intensified battles in the Avdiivka area at the beginning of October. This offensive is considered the most significant since 2014. Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzny, stated that the occupiers lost nearly 10,000 soldiers in battles for Avdiivka. President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that Russian losses in the Avdiivka area were greater than in Bakhmut. At present, the Ukrainian military's offensive is focused on two frontline areas, Bakhmut and Melitopol. The Ukrainian armed forces are attacking south of Bakhmut and, according to the General Staff, are conducting an offensive in the Zaporizhia region. Heavy fighting continues near Avdiivka, which the Russians want to surround and capture in the area of Marinka and Bakhmut. The Russian army is trying to regain lost ground. The Ukrainian army is inflicting great losses on the Russians with its successful attacks on the front line. It is curious how Putin will implement a strategy in the face of these losses. It seems that the Russians will not be able to continue the war with so many losses. As of the last day, the daily loss of Russian military personnel in the war in Ukraine has reached 1,120, while the total loss of the Russian army since the beginning of the occupation has reached 336,230 military personnel. In addition, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Ukrainian armed forces destroyed 18 Russian tanks, 26 armored vehicles and 21 artillery systems in the past day. According to the General Staff, Ukrainian forces repelled 34 enemy attacks on the Avdiivka front and continue assault operations south of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. Missile troops also targeted and hit an enemy helicopter. Do you think the Ukrainian army will be able to completely repel the Russians from the Avdiivka region? What are your comments on the latest developments?